Bubbles are little blocks that hold water or other liquids that have had some changes to them in the 1.4.5 update, and one of them is very interesting. Today, we're going over how Bubble works now and how we can use it in unique ways. There's a massive weird interaction coming up later in the video, so let's get into it. Greetings friends, Khaios here. Bubble is a block sold by the party girl in hard mode that is pretty unique. Players, projectiles, and NPCs can pass through it, but liquids cannot. We've had it for quite some time, but in the 1.4.5 update, it got even better. The change that was added, instead of just having Bubble hold liquids back, we can now place liquids directly into the bubble. And this single change to the block has really opened up a few new strange possibilities. But before we get into them, we're on the hunt towards reaching our 400,000 subscriber milestone. We just recently passed 360k and we're making good progress this month. If you've been enjoying my videos and you would like to help to get the channel promoted with our AI overlord, please leave a like and comment and subscribe to help us get closer to that next big goal. Thank you all very much for supporting the channel. You all are amazing. Now, let's dive into the bubbles. Unintended. Bubbles can now hold liquids inside of them rather than just against them. This will work with any liquid. There are two ways that we can get liquids in bubbles. We can either place the liquid straight into the bubble with a bucket, or we can place the bubble onto the liquid. You might not think that there's a difference between the two, but there actually is. When we use a bucket to place liquid into a bubble, it fills that bubble 100%. That makes sense. But when we place a bubble in the liquid level is retained within that bubble, even though we can't see it. For instance, if we have a single bucket of water that is spread out over a few tiles like this, then we put a bubble into it, then we isolate that bubble. When we break it, you will see that the water level is exactly where it was to begin with. This persists when the world resets and liquid settles as well, so relogging will not change the liquid level. This isn't important in most cases, however, it can have some interesting uses. If you want to design a mob farm that has a very thin line of lava, but you don't want that lava running out, you can now place a row of lava, then bubbles over the top of them, and that thin line will be preserved, allowing your farm to function without the lava running away. The reason why we'd want this is most white and gray named items are destroyed in lava, such as coins. But if the lava is thin enough and the center of the item doesn't touch the lava, it can actually sit within that liquid without getting destroyed. Yet the lava is still damaging anything that touches it, even though it is very thin. So this is why liquid level retention can be helpful. Just as a side note, however, you do want to have a row of blocks under the lava, even if it is in a bubble. While the blocks aren't needed to hold the liquid itself, if items pass through floating lava, even if it is a very thin line, they will be destroyed the second the center of the item hits the lava. So blocks at the bottom are absolutely needed to keep your loot safe in this farm. But liquid level retention isn't actually the biggest change that we get from putting liquids in bubbles. Let's talk about what it really is. We have always been able to echo coat bubbles since the addition of echo coating. But in the past, that would lead to floating square liquids held up by invisible bubbles. Now, we can actually make invisible liquids. When a liquid is inside of a bubble, it doesn't technically have an appearance, as all we see is the bubble. So when we echo coat that block, we also echo coat the liquid. For the first time, we are able to turn liquids completely invisible. That said, when it is a light producing liquid like lava or shimmer, the area will still glow. The liquids will also work completely normal. If you fly into an invisible bubble of shimmer, you will enter the shimmer state and be pushed downwards. We can use this for things like making better looking AFK farms by hiding away the lava, but we could also use it to make better looking boss arenas with hidden honey bubbles, or even troll maps where unseen shimmer might suddenly send an unsuspecting player into a trap. I can see me having a lot of fun with echo-coated liquids, especially in multiplayer, but there's one notable interaction regarding them. Bubbles do not block light. No matter how many bubbles we have on screen, it will not get any darker. Liquids, on the other hand, do block light, at least with water and honey. The more we have, the darker it gets, until it is in complete darkness. But what about when we put liquids inside of the bubble? Well, actually, the bubble starts to block light in the same way that the liquid does. If we fill a massive square of bubbles with liquid, the center of it will be dark. However, if we use partial liquid levels throughout the bubbles, then some light gets through and this doesn't get dark. So this stack of bubbles are filled with 100% water, which is why it is dark in the middle, while this group is filled with lines of 10% water levels, which lets in plenty of light. This allows us to have a big area that's filled with liquid that either blocks light or doesn't block light, depending on how we set up the water levels. But even with the 10% water level bubbles, it still acts like you're in water the entire time. But here's where things get really janky. What happens if we start to echo coat them? Usually an echo coated tile can't block light. Why should it? It's invisible. But liquids, they don't play by the silly rules that blocks do. Sure, the echo coat may turn the bubble that's holding the liquid invisible, but the liquid doesn't care. It will still block light as if it isn't invisible. Kind of. We could still see straight through the liquid as if it isn't there. And it looks pretty bright, doesn't it? Well, it isn't. You would have no idea there was a massive source of water here if not for the map telling us that it's there. So you might be wondering how I can sit here and tell you that this clearly bright area is actually not bright at all. Well, if I take this candy cane wall and run it through the invisible liquid, you'll notice that the further into it we go, the darker it gets, until it is in total darkness, despite how bright it looks in the background. The reason for this is because the bubbles are invisible, the water is invisible, and it is still dark in there. The reason we can't tell that it's dark is because the background layer on the surface isn't like it is in the underground or cavern layers. We cannot cast a light on this layer. And likewise, a shadow cannot be cast here. So while this area is in total darkness, the backgrounds still appear bright as day. But everything that's inside of the liquid, be it a block, furniture, or player, will be in total darkness. This is very strange, but actually pretty cool, because when we are in the liquid, as long as we aren't producing light, we cast a silhouette. Even better, if we have glowing pieces on our armor, like mine does, those glowing bits will show up in the total darkness. But what can we do with this? Well, now we can make silhouette builds that have totally visible backgrounds while everything in the foreground is in darkness. I'll even throw a sample together for us. Now, this is not easy to do. Not everything blocks light, such as trees and furniture. If you place water in front of those objects, the light is blocked and the trees and furniture will be in darkness, but we run into another issue. Liquids, when in total darkness, just register as perfectly square boxes. Solid blocks do this too. If we have a boulder block, it might look round, but the hitbox is actually a perfect square. When you place it in total darkness, it will appear as a totally square box. This is because Terraria just turns off the textures of things that are in total darkness to save on processing power. So this really limits what we can use. We can hardly use any furniture or blocks without them looking like perfectly square boxes. There are some things we can do, however. If an item has a sprite that's larger than the box placement, it will draw the shape outside of the box, and that shape will still be black in the darkness. For example, treetops only take up one tile space, but they are much larger than that visually. The water in front of the treetop might be a square box, but the extended leaves hide that away from us and give us more texture. Anything that is visually bigger than its placement box will do this. For instance, strange plants, but more importantly, walls. All walls are only one tile in size, but they usually stick out in multiple directions. And this is how we're going to give our silhouette build detail. So while I build this, I'm going to try and avoid square water and block shapes as much as possible. I'll build everything without the water and bubbles first, then I'll add the bubbles in and fill them at the end. That way you could see what I'm doing before it's all a silhouette. For this, I'm just going to go with a very simple forest build. This is going to look very cursed at first, because I'll be planting trees in the ground and putting blocks in weird places, but it will all come together in the end. The underground trees are going to act as bushes in this silhouette. As long as I have blocks over the tops of them, they will simply feel like background objects. I'll also be placing blocks in the rough shape of the landscape for the scene. Again, any non-light producing block will look the same, so it doesn't really matter what I use. We just need solid tiles to walk on. With those blocks in place, I can plant a few trees on the surface. I need to make sure that these trees have no branches or wide trunks. The reason for that is because these textures will just be filled with water, and thus they'll become black squares, so they'll look really odd. We can emulate these shapes with walls later, however. Once I have trees that I'm happy with, I can start placing walls around. If you were to do a silhouette build yourself, you may notice that blocks or walls will start to flicker in darkness. This is caused by the textures turning completely off in total darkness. A tiny amount of light will actually fix that entirely. There is something that we can add that produces a tiny amount of light that doesn't break the silhouette and will still appear completely dark, but there's a faint enough light level to fix any flickering that we'll have. All we need is jellyfish wall, shadow paint, and echo coating. The jellyfish wall produces a faint light that takes on the color of the paint that you use on it. So when we paint this wall with shadow paint, that light is so dim, it becomes basically complete darkness. However, it is technically still a light. So I'm going to place a bunch of jellyfish walls all over the build so that we don't have texture flickering in the silhouette. Then I will shadow paint them and echo coat them to hide them away. Once everything's in place, with the forest scene built, all we need to do is fill in the entire area with water to make it completely dark. The forest scene is done, but before we take a look at it, I need to point out a thing that you will notice while standing in silhouetted water. We are drowning, so our characters produce air bubbles. We can get rid of those bubbles with a water-breathing potion or Neptune's shell, as those both allow us to breathe underwater, so we won't make air bubbles. Potions will leave us moving slower and unable to swim, so it could be used for a very interesting slow motion platformer scene, while a Neptune shell will make us move much faster and be able to swim in the air. Or maybe you like the bubbles and you could leave them in place. Either way, this could have a lot of utility for things like adventure maps. Now let's take a look at the scene I built. And here's the final version. As you can see, we have a bright and normal forest where the ground and plants slowly fade into darkness. As we enter the water and walk through it, we too darken to a silhouette. The walls used here act as blocks thanks to the solid tiles I placed in front of them. The treetops look like bushes, and everything that looked weird and light looks perfectly natural in total darkness, even though we have a bright background. All thanks to invisible liquid shoved into tiny bubbles. And now you know how to pull this off yourself. If you found this video helpful, please consider subscribing to help push us towards our goal of 400,000 subscribers. And if you'd like to support the channel in a more direct way, you can become a channel member or a Patreon supporter for various rewards, or you can leave a tip in the digital jar by clicking the thanks button below. A special thanks to my biggest supporters for the month, Kasu and Slathosar Porb. And be sure to check out my channel artist, MythicalWater, linked in the description below. Thank you all very much for watching. Be back soon with a new video. Happy building.